Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. And it's beautiful. College football is beautiful. We've got week one in the books almost. We've got TCU and North Carolina playing tonight. Very excited for that game. But yesterday, it just dawned on me. I was sitting down euphorically on my couch yesterday afternoon, just watching South Carolina and Virginia Tech. And I was kind of just in disbelief and couldn't believe how much better my life has gotten since college football has come back. Now, this is our week one recap episode. And boy, oh boy, things have gone awry for some programs. Things have gone great for others. And it's just another week where it reminds us that the AP preseason poll doesn't mean a gosh darn thing until we got ball on that field, because it was surprising for some and a whole lot worse for more. So some of the big headlines from this week include the Alabama dynasty looks to be officially over. Ohio State doesn't have any dip in skill or talent within their roster. Miami could possibly be the top dog in the ACC going down this stretch after their big win against Notre Dame last night. The G5 playoff spot is wide open after USF barrel rolls Boise State. And LSU's defensive culture and production is back. And finally, they won that week one game under Brian Kelly, broke their 5-year streak. Now, let's get these big matchups and week one and all of its glory and all the other good things that come with it and some other games as we take week one under review. So, like I said earlier, what a great weekend of college football and another great example of how the AP preseason poll isn't really accurate at all. It was accurate to some degree, but you can also see where these writers buy into hype and want to create their own narrative and don't really watch college football themselves. That's why we've got this show. It's a fan that watches college football to report to other fans, and that's what we're about to do. So the marquee matchup in our game of the week coming into week one was obviously going to be number 1 Texas against number 3 Ohio State. Ohio State wins 14-7 with Texas having 336 total yards and Ohio State only having 203. So how did they win? It came down to the Ohio State defense. Now, some of the big takeaways from this game I have is the Arch Madness, the dust has settled, the hype has almost dissipated a little bit, and he's kind of fallen out of favor. Now, I still think that Arch Manning is a good quarterback, and he showed some promise in the second half of the game. The first half, he did not look good. He was hesitant on throwing it deep, and he just fundamentally didn't look like a solid quarterback, which was weird, but it really shouldn't be shocking as this is the first real big-time opponent he's had to play in a while. And then another thing is this Ohio State defense, surprisingly, hasn't left. Even after losing such great defensive starters and their defensive coordinator to Penn State during the offseason, Matt Patricia just showed why he is such a great defensive coordinator and one of the best ones to do it in the game. Now, the biggest thing that I thought was just the worst part about this Texas team, which I was honestly shocked about, was Steve Sarkisian's play calling, and especially in the red zone. It's some of the worst play calling I've ever seen from a coach, and he doesn't know what he's doing at all when he gets in the red zone. He's just running it up. At least he didn't try and do a sweep and lose 7 yards. And this Ohio State defense, with this predictable just run from Steve Sarkisian, is why they were able to beat them in the red zone and within the trenches. Their defense of line looked phenomenal, especially when Texas was on a 4th down. Ohio State limited Texas to only converting 1 out of 5 4th downs this entire game. Now, the on the other side of the ball with Texas's defense, their run defense was exceptional and only held Ohio State to about 2.3 yards a rushing attempt. Now, even though Ohio State and Texas both of these teams didn't look phenomenal, you have to think they're breaking in new starters, even though Arch has had 2 starts the previous season. He didn't play anyone. So are those really starts, or is that really just another high school game? And on the other side, Julian Sayin. He obviously was not throwing it deep a lot. You could sense that there was some, especially early in the game, that there was some tension between Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. He was able to break his defender, but it never seemed like Julian Sayin wanted to throw it deep, or the Ohio State offense wasn't comfortable enough to do that. Now, Texas may have looked very sloppy. Arch may have not looked very well. Steve Sarkisian didn't coach a great game. But we cannot look at this in a microscope so small, and we need to really step back and look at the team and Texas's season as a whole. And we can't forget that they have an easy SEC conference schedule, and this should only help them and allow them to improve from this loss and get Arch comfortable and evolve his play. Now, I think this was very big for Texas and Arch to come in here and lose. Hopefully, they were looking for a win, and a win would have been nice and good for them. But I think this loss kind of gives us the awareness in Arch's capability. Is he going to be able to positively grow from this, especially in a environmental standpoint? He now knows what it's like to truly start and go into an enemy territory because they played Ohio State on neutral field. It's a totally different ball game when you're on a neutral site versus at home in the shoe. So I think that this has only helped Texas and will drive them even further to get better throughout the season. Ohio State, this couldn't have been a better start for them to their season, as everyone felt like now that Ryan Day has gotten that national championship and he kind of got the monkey off his back, is he going to, not go as hard? We all thought, yeah, he can have a comfortable season. If he just has a double-digit win season, it'll be a win. No, it seems like he wants to go back to the playoff, go back to the national championship. And if Julian Sayin can continue to be consistent, and this defense with Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator can hold up and continue to play at this type of level, then I think Ohio State 100% will go back to the semifinals minimum. So their ceiling already looks tremendously higher than what I had them predicted. Now, that is our first big marquee matchup that we were looking at this week as one of our top 3 games of the week. The next top 3 game is number 9 LSU going into Clemson's Death Valley and beating them 17-10. This was another defensive masterclass kind of game on both sides. Both Clemson and LSU, great defenses. Clemson and LSU both seem to need to get some better kickers, but I think LSU finally looks like their old culture that we're used to seeing. And what kind of culture is that? It's one with a strong defense that is going to absolutely suffocate the quarterback in these types of games, and completely demolish your run offense. They were able to hold Clemson to 31 rushing yards, and Clemson's longest rush of the entire game was just 7 yards. And they didn't even give Clemson the ability. They weren't even going to give them the chance to score in the second half, as they shut them out. Now, overall in this game, it never really felt like Clemson was in control, even in the beginning of the game when they were up. And this only adds more to the thought process that it looks like Brian Kelly does finally have his best LSU roster since he has been at the program. And what better way to show that than going on the road to Clemson, one of the best teams with odds to win the national championship, not anymore, but go into Death Valley in this AP top 5 Clemson team and finally get a week 1 win after a long and tumultuous 5 years of choking and stinking it up in week 1 and just showing everyone that maybe Brian Kelly just doesn't have it. But this was the first game I sat down and watched from Brian Kelly and said, wow, that defense, that team actually played a complete game down the stretch. They did not let up at all, and they kept their foot on the gas. And Brian Kelly's got to be happy saying that we're not sitting here talking about the same dang things, because I bet he's loving sitting there and talking about how well his team is and how they should be making the SEC championship game. Now, looking at the other side of the ball, what can we say about Clemson and their season ceiling? Well, first, I don't think that their ceiling has dropped really at all. The ACC is a much easier conference than the SEC. Oh, I can't believe you just said that. Yeah, we all know it. Now, this does bring up some concerns because Cade Klubnik, this was not some kind of new squad that was in Clemson. This is a highly veteran and touted defense and wide receiver room and quarterback in Cade Klubnik. This gives concern for not Clemson and their program, but I think the other teams that surround them in the ACC that have a chance to, or at least look to have a better chance of toppling Clemson. When we look at FSU and what they did at Alabama, their offense is explosive again. When we look at what Miami was able to do against Notre Dame and not choke the game, and Carson Beck kind of making his return in the college football world as a dominant player. We'll get to those games later. But this feeling that Clemson is beatable this season is not something that they want in this ACC that, even though is surrounded by easy teams they can beat, Clemson still has some tough opponents that they're going to have to play, and it really opens up the ACC race. But do we need to be worried that Clemson shouldn't make the ACC title game? I don't think so. I think Dabo Swinney is going to be able to, just like Texas, evolve his team, only learn from this, learn what he needs to work on, and continue to elevate this ball club, because I think he realizes that if he cannot make a solid run in the playoff, then this Clemson fan base is going to start saying, is their dynasty finally over? Is he starting to taper off? I really don't want him or the fan base to think that way, because I think Dabo Swinney is a great coach. Overall, fun guy to watch. Though him running down Howard's Rock, it just does not, it doesn't look, it makes me laugh every time. It makes me laugh every time. But overall, this was a great win for LSU to start their season, showing that they are here to make a playoff run. Clemson still looking like they're going to have a playoff run, but does not look as dominant as we thought coming into this season. And then last night's game, probably the most fun game I watched this season, unless you were an FSU or any other fan base that did not like Alabama. But Notre Dame came into Miami, and I'm going to give credit to Mario Cristobal. He did not drop the ball in this game. He looked like he might. He looked like it. He was close, but he didn't. And I think that the reason that Miami was able to stick out in this game and win 27-24 was because of their defense. Miami's defense has finally found the right defensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman, as he came from Minnesota as the defensive coordinator. And why do you say that? I say this because watching this game, this Miami defense actually looked solid, capable, connected, and he has schematically made the team better in allowing for their recruiting to shine. Now, what do I what do I mean by this? What I mean to say is that the communication that they were able to have with each other and the amount of explosive plays that Notre Dame did not have against Miami really showed the defense has evolved. Now, one thing that I didn't think the defense had evolved in was their issue with tackling that seems to have bled over from last season. They have to make these more complete and, let's just say, good tackles. There were too many times where these Notre Dame players were just able to shed tackles way too easily, and it's not something that you ever want to see. Now, another aspect of Miami's defense that I really liked was their zone defense, and they were able to show multiple looks, especially with Corey Heatherman leading this defense as the coordinator, and it was very threatening, especially in this ACC. Now, on the other side of the ball, I think Notre Dame shouldn't be worried. All of these, and wow, I sound like a broken record, kind of saying that all these top 10 teams that lost are still good and in good shape. Why do I keep saying that? Because the college football playoff metrics have changed based on strength of schedule. So that these top opponents, the fact that you are a top 10 opponent or a top 10 team losing to another top 10 opponent just means that you're not going to dip as much, especially that it's a week 1 loss, especially when it was the BCS and early playoff in the 14 playoff. If you lost late in the season, you were not looked favorably upon. But going into week 1, if you lose to a top 10 opponent, especially close and on the road, you're not going to be penalized as much as they were as, let's say, the last year. And that is why you saw the SEC say that you put in their rules for scheduling their 9-game conference schedule in the future as you having to play at least one Power 4 opponent. And in Notre Dame, but what I really wanted to say after going on that tangent of me sounding like a broken record, I thought CJ Carr looked great, but I think he just played the better team. And from watching him, it's kind of like guys with girls. Everyone claims that they have a type, and it seems that Marcus Freeman has this when it comes to a quarterback. He likes these white boys that can scramble anywhere and actually lower their shoulder down and run for the ball, as he looks like an upgraded Riley Leonard. I think his arm is 100% better than Riley Leonard's. I just want CJ Carr to have as much tenacity as Riley Leonard had, and he definitely showed it. Though he's just going to need to improve a little bit, and I think this is still an Miami team that is going to make the playoffs. I predicted Miami was going to make the playoffs. And I thought that one of the, Jeremiah Love didn't get that much love in this game. Jadarian Price was the star running back in this game that was making some pretty explosive plays, at least in the first half, and looked very solid. And when we are talking about quarterbacks in this game, we can't not talk about Carson Beck. It was weird. For me personally, I don't know if anyone else felt this, but why did I kind of see Carson Beck on the field wearing this Miami uniform, like rooting for him? Like, he seems to automatically be more likable, which is weird to say. Even in the post-game interview, he didn't say anything stupid. I thought it was funny that he cussed on TV, but he didn't say anything stupid. He didn't show up cocky. He seems like he is cutting out all the BS in his life, and he's really focusing on the season. And it's almost like the first glimpse of what I would like to say, Carson Beck's redemption arc. I sat there, he thought he was more likable, saw myself rooting for him, and early in the first quarter, I saw him throw a deep ball, and it made me sit back and go, he hasn't lost that arm strength. He has not lost that arm strength based off of that injury in the SEC championship, and everyone was worried about it. I was worried about it. But I thought that was a great statement to make by Mario Cristobal and Carson Beck. Now, he didn't complete the pass, but the Miami receivers made some beautiful catches from Carson Beck. But back on to Carson Beck, it showed that, yeah, he's still as deadly as ever. And I think it was very big for his career moving forward and for the Miami team moving forward, saying we have our guy. That get out of jail free card just might be a ticket into the playoffs if Carson Beck keeps playing like this. And I will 100% be keeping this team under review. I just want to go out and say I thought the Shimon moment, as I would like to say for this week in college football, was the catch by CJ Daniels, the insane catch to end the half by Miami to take, I believe, the lead. And I thought it was, I was sitting down. He caught that pass that was a little overthrown, one-handed. Shimon moment of the week to say football is back. I got up out of my couch and I just, both hands on my head, in my hair, Michigan fan, going, what did I just witness? Because it was a great play, great moment, and it made my whole freaking weekend. Made my weekend. Shimon, college football is back. That's my Shimon moment of the week. That's it. That's a new title, new segment. Shimon moment of the week. Shimon with your bad self, CJ Daniels. Anything? I'm getting too hyped up about college football. What else do I have? I always take notes on my legal pad, sheet of paper here. Got to look at if there's any other notes. I kind of lost my train of thought after Shimon kind of took over. But I thought was something crazy that kind of gave Miami this sense of, yeah, maybe this is their year, is that something that went their way was a crazy double tip interception that really, in my opinion, felt like, yeah, this is Miami's game. It was a crazy interception, kicked it up with his foot as the Miami defender tried to grab it, and the big boy on the D-line was able to get it. And Notre Dame, I think they almost had it. They almost came back, and Mario Cristobal almost choked, but he didn't. And Miami is looking like a contender in the ACC. Now, outside of our top 3 games of the week, let's get to some other notable games around the country. And I think the game that everyone has been talking about, everyone has been praying for the downfall of, everyone that was in awe, and everyone that either cried tears of joy or tears of sadness were all tuned in to number 8 Alabama getting upset by Florida State in Doak Campbell Stadium. Florida State beats Alabama 31-17. My initial thoughts on this game. As a Bama-sexual, I know that we should have sat there and said, you know what, where's our love? You know, if you got a Bama fan out there and you're thinking maybe I should give him a hug, don't give us a hug. We have been on top of the sport for about 17 to 20 years. We've been the dynasty that has been destroying college football and has had a chokehold on success. And we never showed any pity to anyone as Bama-sexuals. We never showed any kind compassion or love for anyone else when we won, and you didn't whenever we won another national championship. We deserved everything. We deserve all the hate. I know that my phone personally had a seizure when Alabama lost, with all the notifications that were flooded in by friends, family, loved ones, and all the other football fans that are in my life, and especially the Auburn football fans as well. They really let me have it, especially some of my FSU fans. They let me have it as well, though they were a little bit less rambunctious than the others. And that is why I've donned black for this episode if you were watching on YouTube or Spotify video, because there is fear in the Alabama fan base and probably acceptance that this dynasty is over, though I question the validity of the dynasty not being over until people stop rushing the field against us. If we lose and this team doesn't rush the field, maybe something's wrong. We've just turned into that other team that you play on Saturdays. But outside of that initial rant, these are my takeaways from the game. Alabama's season ceiling comes into question as their season outlook looks dire with tough games ahead. They have a very tough SEC schedule that just looks a whole lot tougher after this just pathetic loss to FSU. Outside of that, Alabama's main concern is the culture and penalty problem they currently have with Coach DeBoer. Saban in 200 games at Alabama, his first 200 games, lost to unranked opponents 4 times. And DeBoer has lost 4 times to unranked opponents in his first 14 games. That is a stat that you do not want to see as a Bama fan. Alabama was unable to establish a complete run game for the second year under DeBoer. The first drive was 55 yards, and it looked like, wow, Alabama's making a statement here. We're running the ball again. And then they ran 29 yards the rest of the game. And this was not something you wanted to see. It was the fewest yards Alabama has ever rushed in a game since 1975. 1975. Pathetic. Sad. Unprofessional. These are all terms I am now associating with Alabama. It's not good. Now, for Alabama, at least a bright spot was Jeremy Bernard, and Ty Simpson didn't look great, but he didn't look awful. That's all I have to say about that. Ryan Williams needs to step up his performance and numbers for this. And Alabama had absolutely no pass protection for Ty Simpson in this game. Now, on the other side of things, when we're looking at this Alabama FSU game, I just have to say that Gus Malzahn does not have Alabama's number 100% because Alabama was still able to dominate him in some of those Iron Bowls. I think he showed why he is one of the best offensive coordinators and offensive masterminds, as he was able to still show everyone that misdirection with a mobile quarterback is one of the most explosive ways to open up an offense's playbook. And he did just that against Alabama. It forced Alabama to have a quarterback spy on Nick Castellanos for almost the entire game after he broke some great runs against Bama's defense, who did not look like they wanted to even be on the field and play. And what else? I think that Nick Castellanos, props for him for coming out here and being able to back up everything he said. He looked a lot better and comfortable, I felt like, in this Gus Malzahn offense than he was in Bill O'Brien's offense up in Boston College. He fits exactly what Gus Malzahn wants, and he is the exact player that Gus Malzahn has experienced while coaching at Auburn. But outside of that, this was a much-needed win for Mike Norvell's coaching career. This has tipped the needle in his favorability in FSU, his coaching career, and how he goes out on how he wins and beats top tier opponents, because this was huge for him. And it's only going to go up, I feel like, for him in the, maybe not in how they finish the season, but in his favorability within the FSU fan base. Now, outside of that, yes, I'm not going to draw on too long. You can go anywhere else and find all the rants, all the love and hate that has been spewed out online about Alabama's dynasty finally going down, about Alabama stinking, about Alabama slowly going into irrelevancy, Alabama slowly losing their grip on the SEC, and with reality as Bama fans become even more delusional, thinking that we were going to easily walk in here and win. But it seems that there's a shift in culture, momentum, and overall standings and rankings within the SEC, and Alabama against the field as a whole. Another game is Tennessee beating Syracuse 45-26. This was, I think, a statement for Josh Heupel to say, give me any quarterback you want. I'm going to make sure that we have a productive offense, both running and passing the ball. And his defense did a good job against a Syracuse rebuild team, in my opinion. But I think it was a huge statement to have Joey Aguilar, who was the worst turnover quarterback last season, and make him absolutely look like a stud. Josh Heupel was able to turn a dud into a stud in Tennessee, and this makes their season outlook so much more favorable if he is able to not just put up these same numbers, but look just as good against these SEC opponents. And then 13, South Carolina was able to beat Virginia Tech 24-11. I thought this was a very interesting game. This was very back and forth. It felt like in the first half, South Carolina very sloppy. Virginia Tech able to get some key stops, field goals. But South Carolina, once they hit an 80-yard punt return in the third quarter, or fourth quarter, beginning of like the fourth quarter, really changed the momentum, and was when I personally felt like and realized that Shane Beamer may have a good season, and you might have to start buying into the South Carolina stock before it gets too high. Outside of that, I thought the Virginia Tech team was a little sloppy. At some point, I was like, holy crap, this Virginia Tech wide receiver core is fantastic. And then about 5 minutes later, I'd be like, wow, this receiving core really isn't that good. 5 minutes later, dang, these guys are making incredible catches. It just felt very inconsistent for Virginia Tech. And glad Shane Beamer was able to stomp on his dad's previous team and when he was a coach there. But Lenore Sellers definitely is looking good and looking competent, and South Carolina's defense was able to give them the win in this one. And that's something I'll bring up later, but it seems like defense is going to be a common theme in a lot of these wins for 2025. And then we've got Auburn beating Auburn beating Baylor 28-23. This was great. This was great for the Auburn fan base. This was great for Hugh Freeze to come out here and say, "Hey, we got our offense back. We got our swagger back." The swagger that they had in that game with Jackson Arnold was unparalleled to what we have seen in these past few seasons with Hugh Freeze at the helm of the college football program at Auburn. And this was, I don't know, one thing I want to say is that, yes, Jackson Arnold was great. He looked great. He looked like this, almost a little bit like Nick Marshall, in my opinion. And it was 38-24, not 23. That's my bad. But Jackson Arnold was good. He was running. He was able to show that he was dominant and he is a tough quarterback. Though Auburn needs to make sure that he does not get injured making some of these decisions and putting his head first in the way he was getting tackled. He needs to really save his body for the season if Auburn wants to have a high ceiling. But this Hugh Freeze offense is finally coming into effect, and it looks like they are going to finally have a great season under Hugh Freeze. And then Georgia Tech beat Colorado 27-20. This was honestly a game Colorado lost. Deion Sanders had some questionable coaching decisions in the final drive of the game, but Georgia Tech, they were able to do what they want to do. They want to bleed the clock. They want to have a meticulous run and passing attack led by Haynes King, and that's what they were able to do in Colorado. And it was just a choke on Deion Sanders, and Georgia Tech just finished the game. And then as we get to other notable games around the country, Mississippi State beat Southern Miss 34-17. Tulane beat Northwestern 23-3. Thought this was really big for Tulane as they now kind of are ascending as the top group of 5 team to take that group of 5 bid for the college football playoff. And then UNLV beat Sam Houston 38-21. UNLV, after a shaky beginning against Idaho State, finally had a comfortable and complete game that allowed them to sit back and say, okay, maybe we're good. Maybe we're good. And then Thursday night, USF won 31-7, which was, just abysmal. And let me double check if that's right. Sorry, here. 34-7. That's my bad. 34-7. Wow. We really don't know how to count here. But 34-7, USF was able to defeat Boise State. And this really showed us that maybe Ashton Jeanty was snubbed of the Heisman Trophy because USF really just put it on. They put it on Boise State. Boise State did not look like the team they were last year. And this opens up the spot for the playoff spot for the group of 5 team. Sorry. Had a moment of just blanking out here, if I'm being honest. And then Kansas State, their season cannot look any worse right now for any of these top tier teams. Kansas State, number 17 Kansas State, beat North Dakota 38-35, and Kansas State celebrated this win like they had just won a national championship or something. This is not a good look for them. Avery Johnson looks like an abysmal quarterback, and someone needs to make sure that his dad and his brother are not fighting if they lose another game. And now those are kind of the other notable games I wanted to touch on, but the other takeaways that I had from week 1 are as follows. I think the coordinator hires during the offseason showed up in these week 1 games. These standouts include Ohio State's defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, making Arch Manning uncomfortable and uncoordinated. FSU's offensive coordinator, Gus Malzahn, for still being able to beat Alabama and gets back to his fast-paced multiple-look offense with misdirection mixed in. Miami's defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, being able to simplify the defense communication and evolve the looks that they are able to give. So coordinators, they're looking like some of the best hires that we have seen and some of the biggest game changers in this week. And another big thing is that this week we saw defenses win the big games and had some severely low scoring games compared to what we've seen in the past. Now, something that I thought would be fun to do is people like to reference college football, as stock. Whose stock do you want to buy into? Who's on the rise and who's on the fall? And I think let's discuss some stock options that are up and down for the season. First, LSU stock is up after Brian Kelly has his first Week 1 win as the head coach of LSU against a top 5 opponent on the road. LSU stock up. Alabama's stock is down after a season outlook doesn't look favorable with much tougher opponents on their schedule than FSU. And just like that, FSU's stock is up as now it looks like an ACC championship contender is back in Tallahassee after the quarterback play and offense under Gus Malzahn looks so much better than last season. Stock is down for Boise State without Ashton Jeanty, and the program is in a completely different state as he was snubbed from the Heisman, maybe. Stock is up for Tennessee and Heupel as they turn quarterback Joey Aguilar from a turnover machine to an offensive asset, carving up Syracuse. Kansas State stock is down as they look absolutely terrible with Avery Johnson as the quarterback, almost losing to North Dakota at home. Number 1, Iowa State looks to be the team to beat in the Big 12 as they take care of business after an ugly Ireland game. Auburn stock is up with Jackson Arnold as the quarterback of the future for Auburn and reminds me of the same poise and scrambling ability Nick Marshall had in 2013. Tulane is up after Boise State lost, and they won a complete game over a Power 4 team, even though that Power 4 team was Northwestern. And what's up? Just overall defenses for all of these top-tier teams and against top 10 opponents. So here are our closing categories after talking about some stock options. So who is in the Heisman hype seat after this weekend? I think once the dust is settled, we're really going to take a look at Lenore Sellers being confident and capable against Virginia Tech, and Carson Beck, honestly, doing really well in Miami's win and not doing anything too drastic to look bad. Now, our player of the week, though, has to go to Joey Aguilar. He went 16 for 28 completions, 247 passing yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. This was huge. Like I said earlier, Josh Heupel just seems to be able to know how to fit and work in a quarterback no matter kind of what he looks like. He is going to be able to evolve with the players around him and his squad, because he personally, coming into this year, everyone was kind of like, oh, yeah, we don't expect much from Tennessee. They weren't able to kind of get anything. People didn't think that they were going to be good after losing Nico, and definitely didn't think they were going to do any better with Joey. But now they got Joey in there, and Joey looks like he knows how to play some football now. And next, we've got our good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, I'm going to have to give it to Ohio State and LSU's defense winning a huge Week 1 matchup against a top 5 opponent, and both of these defenses able to make crucial stops on for Ohio State, 4th down and red zone, for LSU running and just being a dominant defensive program again, it seems. Now, the bad is 100% Alabama's performance against FSU this Saturday. It was sad, pathetic, and unprofessional, to say the least. And the ugly, Steve Sarkisian really just calling plays inside the red zone and on 4th down. I think I could have come up with something better than that or have gotten better coaching suggestions on Madden rookie mode. So this completes our entire week 1 recap for college football under review. Next episode on Thursday, we will talk about some marquee matchups as week 2, as we kind of slow down. We still get some really fun matchups. And some of these that we're going to talk about include Iowa at Iowa State, Michigan at Oklahoma, Kansas at Missouri, the Border Wars back, and Arizona State at Mississippi State. So a lot of fun, interesting matchups as we come into week 2. So I'm Nick Watts. I want to thank all of you for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.